தமிழரின் பிம்பம் உங்கள் டிவி.
Our next speaker has come very kindly as a substitute for a speaker who couldn't come. Mr. Somprakash Singh gives his apologies, but we are very pleased to welcome in his place Mr. Nadarajan, who is the editor of New Look, and he is also the architect of the genocide project in Tamil Nadu. And that project is called Mulikaival Courtyard. So welcome very much.
Good evening, good afternoon, friends. I am Natarajan from Chennai. We are participating in this conference. My friends from India already emphasized the morning very much. This session about the genocide in Sri Lanka. The claim of Sri Lankan government as if they are the original settlers and Tamils as the people who went from India and settled there. It is untrue. If anyone goes through the Mahavamsam, which tells the history of the Sinhalese, how they came into Sri Lanka, will clearly explain. They originally migrated, not even I will say they are migrated. The son of a king, the prince, who did atrocities against the people in the Orissa area of India, according to history. The king punished the son and made him to go out of Orissa area. Thereby, he went and, along with thousands of people, went and settled in single area. According to Mahavamsam, if you trace the history, it is only 2,500 years. Before that, the Tamils lived there. If anyone gone through the history of the Lemuria, the continent which was lost, which was nearest to the Indian Ocean, a part of India, some of the areas have been, due to the tsunami-like situation in the past, some 2,000, 3,000 or several decades before happened, and some areas have gone out of the Indian Ocean, Indian nation. Now the problem, how it has started. India, before the British colonized the India, there were 8 big kingdoms and 376 smaller kingdoms were there. Due to the invasion of the British and colonized the India, at the time of giving liberation, freedom to India, they unified the whole country and given to one people in Delhi. Without our knowledge, without the knowledge of the 375 smaller kingdoms, which were existing prior to the British came to India, were all amalgamated and became India. Why I am saying this? Before that, a day was there when King Rajaraja Chola, who went from Tamil Nadu, conquered Sinhalese, and another king went and conquered and brought the Sinhalese and constructed a dam in Tamil Nadu. This was a story. Not a story, history, I should say. It is there, historical evidences are there. But because we are under the central government, Indian government, all the people referred what India is doing. When the genocide is happening in Sri Lanka, why India remaining silent? There are also several ethnic groups in India, 18 languages, approved languages, more than 200 languages spoken by different sections of the people. Therefore, the people who are living in the southern part are totally different from the northern part people. Still, we have though we are unified under the British, and when the British left the India, they have bifurcated depending on the Islamic and Hindu religious factor. They bifurcated and given the Pakistan to them. Now, at the same time, in the year 1948, when British given the freedom to Sinhalese, there are only two ethnic groups, one Sinhalese and the Tamil. And there were two different entities which were amalgamated for the administrative reason by the British. They have given was one nation to the Colombo people, that is taken over by the Sinhalese. From the day the whole trouble started and suppression and oppression to the Tamils happened. This is what the whole issue.
Announced earlier, he's the president of the TNPF and the general secretary of the Eelam Tamil Congress. So he'll be our final live speaker from the panel.
Once again to genocide, but specifically to try and sort of, pull the strings in and give it, give the entire notion of what really is actually happening, give it some sort of perspective. Yeah? So when we use the term genocide, as every single speaker here has used, what actually do we mean? Are we only talking about the annihilation of life? Is it only the killings? What exactly do we mean? And for that, I would term it like this. It is the systematic dismantling of the existence of the Tamils as a nation on the island of Sri Lanka. Right? So it is the dismantling of the existence of the Tamils as a nation. That is the specific target that the Sri Lankan state is aiming at, to prevent us from continuing to exist as a nation, not as a minority, not as just a fringe group, but as a nation. That is the challenge, and that is the agenda. So what is a nation? A people can claim the status of a nation when they have a distinct culture, when they have a distinct language, when they have a distinct economy of their own, an indigenous economy that sustains their national life, and particularly when they have a well-defined territory. Now, these are the composite sort of conditionalities that make you qualify for nationhood. And when the Sri Lankan state, when we say that the Sri Lankan state is carrying out a genocide, what we mean is not merely the mass killings that have taken place during the war and even before the war in the form of pogroms, but actually the systematic undermining and negation of the existence of the Tamils on each of these specific aspects. So it's a coordinated effort. It's not an ad hoc sort of emotional reaction. It is a systematic, well-planned, state-sponsored effort to make us not exist as a nation. We spoke in terms of Sinhalization, right? So Sinhalization takes place in the form of, firstly, in the form of state-aided Sinhala settlements in the Tamil-speaking areas of the Northeast, with the intention of changing the demography of the Tamil-speaking areas in such a manner that the Tamils will cease to be a majority in that area. That is the Sinhalization project that we talk of. But we must also understand that when speakers like Mr. Premachandran spoke about a militarization, I would suggest to conference that the militarization project is also a part of the Sinhalization project. So if you look at the way in which the militarization is taking place in the Northeast, you don't have just mere military camps. What you have are essentially military cantonments. So you have these massive hundreds of acres of land that is appropriated by the state at the expense of the Tamil people. And within those cantonments, you have literally a village that is constructed. The military are not the only ones who are within those cantonment boundaries. Families are being settled. Military personnel's families are being settled. There are houses being built. There is farming going on. So what you have essentially is, in the name of militarization, you have a Sinhalization that is going on. And in over a number of years, when the borders of this military cantonment are actually done away with, what you will really have is a Sinhala village, if not a Sinhala city. So the Sinhalization has two elements. There is a third. We have been complaining, that is, the Tamils have been complaining, that the Sri Lankan state has been using the Tamil-speaking Muslim people as agents in a manner to undermine the unity of the Tamil-speaking peoples. We have been complaining, for example, in Mullaitivu, recently in Mannar and many other places, that the Sri Lankan state is settling the Tamil-speaking Muslims in the Northeast in numbers that they never existed before. So in areas where you never had Muslims, you all of a sudden have Muslims being settled. Areas where you had just merely 100 families of Muslims before, you have up to 1,000 families being settled. And this as well, I would argue, is a part of Sinhalization. Because the idea is that when state alienates land to the Muslims, ultimately the Muslims will sell that land to the Sinhalese. So it is not a direct, they're getting sophisticated about how they go about it. The Tamils will find it very difficult to object to Muslims coming and settling in the Northeast, particularly in the context of the unfortunate eviction of the Muslims from the Northeast in the past. So it's a very sensitive issue for the Tamils. So the Sri Lankan state is using that element to bring in Muslims, knowing fully well that they are not, that their intention is not to permanently settle in the Northeast, but merely to have ownership, paper ownership, eventually to sell such properties to the Sinhalese. So it's a perfectly legal transaction that no one really can complain about. It is not like confiscating Tamil privately owned land, but rather buying it off the Muslims themselves. So that is the way in which the Sinhalization is practically taking place. We also have spoken about cultural genocide, how the northeastern areas are being systematically Buddhicized, where you have Buddhist temples being built in areas where there are no Buddhists. That is a very clear element that has already been spoken, so I won't go into details. But another aspect, and this is very important, because this is how sophisticated the genocidal project is. Another aspect in which this undermining of the Tamil nation is taking place is by targeting the indigenous Tamil economy. Now, if you take the Northeast, the Northeastern indigenous economy is based on three elements. One is farming, the other is fishing, and the thirdly, it's trade. farming, we all know, right? Farming, we all know how the farming is being undermined. Land is being acquired in the form of military, for military purposes. The most fertile land, if you take the Jaffna Peninsula, the most fertile land is actually under military occupation in Palali, right? So fertile land for farming is being nationalized in the sense of state takeover, and that land is being plowed by the military. So they are actually farming in that area. If you look at the military website, just as early as 2 weeks ago, they have admitted that in Palali, they are actually using the land to farm, and the produce is being sold in the northeastern market at heavily subsidized rates. The local farmer cannot effectively compete, right? So you're effectively pushing the local farmer out of business. So on the one hand, there is a land grab, there is a takeover of land. On the other hand, that land is being used to undermine one of the 3 pillars of the Tamil indigenous economy, which is farming. That is not just, I just mentioned Palali, it's happening all over the Northeast. The second is fishing. Now, what I'm saying is not just in a particular area. I'm saying it applies to the entire northeastern coast. But I will specifically mention one area, which is Mullaitivu, because that is a place where we visited and we have personal knowledge, and I can give details. But whatever I say has to actually be applied to the entire northeastern coast. The Tamil fishermen are actually fishing with equipment that is over 30 years old. All that the state has done since the end of the war is to allow the fishermen to pick up the pieces in the form of going and identifying the old fiberglass dinghies so that they can take it out to sea and do their fishing. None of the farmers in the Northeast, none of the Tamil fishermen in the Northeast have actually been empowered in the form of new big fishing trawlers, which they used to own long ago. They are still using methods that are 30 years old. On the other hand, you have Sinhalese fishermen from the south who are permitted to come into the Northeast. And when they come into the Northeast, they are given state sanction. The military, the Navy supports them. They fish off the coast of the Northeast using massive trawlers. They use highly sophisticated fishing techniques that the local fishermen, Tamil fishermen, cannot compete with. And here's what is important. They also use banned methods of fishing. So you have fishing nets which are banned, which essentially destroy the entire sea life. Such methods are banned. They are strictly enforced. The ban is strictly enforced for the Tamil fishermen. But when the Sinhalese fishermen, who are encouraged by the Sri Lankan Navy to fish off the coast of the Northeast, they are also allowed to use these banned fishing methods. The result is that the Tamil fishermen, already poor, already primitive in their methods of fishing, when they actually go out to fish, there is no fish. Right? So you have highly technical, advanced form of fishing encouraged by the Sinhalese fishermen, and also illegal fishing techniques that essentially, in Tamil it's called Suryadra, which is essentially wiping out the entire fishing fish population in that area. Now these fishermen, as a result, lose their existence. They have no way of surviving. They are struggling to survive, right? And the result of that is that the military themselves, with the backing of Sinhalese ministers, target these impoverished fishermen in order to pursue people smuggling projects primarily to countries like Australia. So it is the transfer of this fishing population out of that region that is systematically being pushed by the Sri Lankan state. The final point that I would like to make is that when the Tamils make the claim for the Northeast to be their traditional homeland, they make it on the basis that it is a contiguous Tamil linguistic region. The Sri Lankan state, Mr. Premachandran also mentioned this, the Sri Lankan state has been trying for the last 50 years to break the contiguity of the Northeast. And the sensitive area that they have targeted is the Trincomalee and Mullaitivu border region, which essentially is the region that links the northern province, Tamil-speaking northern province, with the Tamil-speaking eastern province. And one of the target areas is Manalaru, or what is known as Velioya, that Mr. Premachandran mentioned in great detail. But there is another element in the way in which they are trying to break this contiguity. It is by trying to change the demography in such a manner, such as this. I visited, along with my party, Trincomalee to the displaced camps in Trincomalee of the Sampur people. In one of the camps that we visited, we were not being followed by the military. We managed to get in there without the military presence. The camp's name is Kilivatti camp. And when we spoke to those people, they told us something that was startling. They said that in the camps and in Tamil areas in the Trincomalee district, the local government agent, the Grama Seva Nilade, which is the village sort of headman or the agent of the government in each village, and the local divisional secretaries of the region, Tamil areas, are encouraging Tamil families to strictly adhere to family planning methods. They are in fact being given incentives to follow strict family planning methods. And here's what was startling. These very same government institutions do the complete opposite to Sinhala areas in the Trincomalee district. They are encouraging Sinhalese families to have children. The more children they have, the more incentives they are given by way of monetary as well as land incentives. So I think what is important is that there is a systematic process. That process has a very clear design. It is multifaceted with the one intention of dismantling the Tamils existing as a distinct nation on the island of Sri Lanka. And I think we need to understand that context. Finally, I wish to make a rather sad and also ironic note. This Sinhalization and this sort of structural genocide that has been taking place that I have just described took place from the very inception of Sri Lanka's so-called independence. Right? It started from the moment the British left the island. And it continues today. The irony is that the only time that this structural genocide, I'm not talking about the loss of life, I'm talking about the structural genocide that I just described, the only time that we managed to stop and contain it was actually during the height of the LTT's existence. And on that note, I'd like to thank you.
Condemnation of the current genocidal policy. We have a restoration to our agenda. The Honourable Ganashamurthy, excuse my pronunciation. Is he? Yes, thank you. So he is a member of Parliament in India, and he, in fact, will be our final panellist this afternoon.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். I am Ganesamurthy, Member of Parliament of the House of People of India, elected from Tamil Nadu, representing Maramazhi Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam MDMK, a political party headed by Mr. Vaiko, dedicated for the cause of the suffering of Tamils in the island of Sri Lanka. I extend my sincere thanks to the organizers of this purposeful and timely conference for having extended me to invitation to participate in this panel discussion on different forms of genocide in Sri Lanka. When the British gave independence to Sri Lanka on 1948, the authority to rule was vested with the Sinhalese, who subjugated the Tamil people as second-class citizens, as our leaders already told. In 1956, Sri Lankan government made Sri Lanka only as the official language and then made Buddhism as a state religion. The education and job opportunities, Tamil were totally discriminated. When the Tamil justifiably started peaceful agitation, they were ruthlessly oppressed by the police and military. Many Tamils were brutally killed. The pacts of 1957 and 1965 between the Sinhalese government and the leader of Tamil, Thandai Selva, were unilaterally abrogated by the Sri Lankan government. Tamil lost their basic rights. Cultural genocide against Tamils starts there. Places of worship of Tamil, temples and cultures were desecrated and destroyed by the Sinhalese with the help of the police and the army. State-aided colonies took place. The Sinhalese government forcefully appropriated lands from the Tamil homeland, driving out the Tamils from the villages, and these lands were then given to the Sinhalese settlers. Extrajudicial killings, blunder, rape, and disappearance of the Tamil by the Sri Lankan police and army became the order of the day. Due to these atrocities, Tamils determined to have their separate nation. In 1977, general election to the Sri Lankan parliament became more or less the referendum of the Tamil people, in which they gave their verdict in total for a separate sovereign in Tamil Eelam. The Sri Lankan government unjustified its brutal military attacks. The famous Jaffna library, which contained the invaluable treasury of the Tamil literature and culture, were burned to ashes in 1981. 2 years later, in 1983, pogrom, thousands of Tamil were killed. The most gruesome killing took place in Velikadai prison, where 58 Tamil were slaughtered. In this background, the younger generation of Tamil restored to armed struggle in 1970, spearheaded by the LTT under the dedicated leadership of Mr. Velupillai Prabhakaran. The most gruesome, cruel massacre, which shocked the hearts of the minds of the international community, was bombing of the Senjolai orphanage on 2006, in which 61 girl children were brutally killed, and about 170 children were grievously wounded. Freedom of expression was totally curtailed. Media person, particularly foreign media, the international NGOs, even the ICRC, were not at all permitted to visit any of the conflict area. The renowned journalist Sivaram was shot dead in broad daylight on 28th April 2005 in a busy street of Colombo by the Sri Lankan Army intelligence. The editor of Sunday Leader, a renowned Sinhalese journalist who exposed the genocide of Tamils, was murdered by the government forces. 4 members of parliament in Sri Lanka, the Tamil representative democratically elected, were shot dead at point blank range by the Sri Lankan army in the daylight. The Sri Lankan government engineered its armed forces to commit all atrocities, crimes, particularly against the woman folk, gang rape and killings.
Two members of parliament from Canada presenting already. I'm being given a Samsung. Thank you. But we're also now going to show on the screen, it's a message from the Mayor of Markham in Ontario in Canada. And as you'll hear, I think this is a huge step forward in terms of international solidarity. So let's hear what he has to say.
Hello, Vanakkam. I'm honored to have been asked to share a few thoughts from the city of Markham, Canada's most culturally diverse city. In our role as a member of the global community, we stand firm in our commitment to protect fundamental human rights. I'm so pleased that back in April of 2009, the city of Markham was the first government in Canada to pass a resolution on human rights violations in Sri Lanka. The resolution called for the Canadian government to undertake an investigation of possible human rights violations and genocide in Sri Lanka, and to undertake any necessary actions. The resolution was forwarded to the Government of Canada and all local members of Parliament, and it signaled the need for Canada to take action. As a city, we are limited in our ability to intervene in foreign affairs. Still, we did not stand silent in the face of our Tamil community's call for action. We chose to support them. We chose to be a voice of influence with our federal government. Our Tamil community is a significant and growing cultural group in Markham. Canada has the largest Tamil diaspora outside of Sri Lanka with more than 300,000 people. And of those, over 10,000 Tamil families call Markham their home. We're also proud that Markham Councillor Logan Kanapathy, who's there with you today, is the first Sri Lankan Tamil to be elected to public office in all of Canada. Ours is a diverse and inclusive community. So as mayor, I recognize that when people immigrate to Canada and to communities like Markham, they still have a strong connection to the countries they have called home. I also know that people come to our wonderful country for a variety of reasons, for a different life, for a better life, even to seek refuge from the life they left behind. They desire nothing more than peace, freedom, and the hope for a wonderful future. My personal commitment is to have a consistently strong voice for the protection of human rights and the advancement of democratic values. As a member of UNESCO's Coalition of Municipalities Against Racism and Discrimination, Markham is committed to ending atrocities, intolerance, and injustice. I wish to acknowledge and thank the strong support of our Prime Minister, Stephen Harper, and his government who have given the support to the UN resolution. I congratulate today's organizers for gathering the world community together to unite in our global efforts to bring an end to injustice and inequality. Thank you.
Okay, so now we move in. We've got 38 minutes by my watch for questions and discussion, which doesn't give you a great deal of time. We've actually had a very comprehensive panel which has looked at this issue both historically and what's happening now in terms of the experience of the genocide against Tamil people. So I'm sure there are lots of questions. They can be contributions. I'm quite happy to take them. I will give preference to people who haven't yet contributed, if that's okay. I mean, it's not an iron rule, but I will give that preference, okay?
Do you, like in political lobby with international community of establishments like in India, are you expressing the same feeling with them? Like expressing the genocide and expressing the need for existence of Tamil nation in the homeland and the territorial rights of Tamil land?
Mic on? Yeah.
I have a question for the Honourable Mr. Patrick Brown, Member of Parliament, Canada, and Mr. Nikolai Jung, International Human Rights Association, Bremen, Germany. I've selected both of them because they seem to be independent and perhaps neutral. I'm also relatively independent, although I'm a Ceylon Tamil. I'm 72 years old. I was born in Singapore and I was brought up in Kuala Lumpur. So I've looked at things happening in Sri Lanka with overview perspective. And it seems to me from what Mr. Suresh Premachandran, the Honourable Member of Parliament from Sri Lanka, and Mr. Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam said, that there's plenty of injustice being done in Sri Lanka. And it's quite clear to me that if justice is not done, injustice will prevail. In this case, there's much injustice prevailing. And I see the logo up there, different forms of genocide in Sri Lanka. Genocide itself is bad enough, but here we have different forms of genocide. And there are, in fact, many different forms. But the slogan there shows, teardrops falling, painted in red. So it shows genocide. But it shows a shape of Tamil Eelam, from Puttalam to Jaffna Peninsula, right to Amparai. So perhaps it's mixing up two different questions. And I would like to suggest that the Tamil National Alliance stops negotiating reconciliation or solution and asks only for justice for the genocide. If they do that, they are bound to meet with greater success, and they could well have, if they had stuck to that program from the beginning, they could well have prevented a lot of injustice which is taking place now. So my question is, should the Tamil National Alliance refuse to talk about a solution and just ask for justice to be done for the tens of thousands, or rather 150,000 Tamils who are targeted and killed?
Okay, thank you. I'll take three more. Thank you very much for that question. In the middle, sir.
Yeah, my question is also to Honourable Mr. Premachandran. Can we conclude from your talk that the non-violent struggle led by Mr. Chelvanayam having failed 30 years or so ago, and if not for the armed struggle of LTT, the singularization of the Tamil homeland would have been completed about 25 years ago. And if as nobody seems to be interested in a negotiated solution, because you have tried for about 18 months or 18 rounds of talk, and it is at a standstill. So what do you suggest? Do you think that, again, there should be an armed struggle to come to some solution to the problem in Sri Lanka?
The party from TNPF, and today the people who addressed here, Mr. Premachandran and Honorable Mave Senadiraja, they talk about genocide. But at the same time, the TNA leader, Mr. Sammandan, at occasions that he limited with the talk about war crimes, and he tried to avoid the word genocide. And he would like to know what is the position of the TNA.
They say that everything, the people are fine, they're happy there, and that, that what we do is actually detrimental to the Tamil people living on the ground. Now, I tried to explain that, of course, the situation for the people is still dire. However, there's an ongoing structural genocide taking place. But I just wanted to hear from maybe Mr. Ponnambalam, from someone who's on the ground, their kind of response if they were to be asked that question. Thank you.
Yeah, the first one about the genocide taking place in Sri Lanka, whether we are taking up these matters with the international community, specifically with India and other countries, that should you ask. I think Comrade Pandian is here, the CPI State Secretary and the National Council member. I think he knew it very well what we are doing in India, in Tamil Nadu as well as in Delhi. I think on and off, whenever we are going, and maybe for this purpose, and we are going and we are explaining the ground realities on and off. And not only that, I think we are having regular contacts and we are meeting not only, Comrade Pandyan, CPI, CPM, and BJP, and various other political parties and the groupings, and we are explaining these things. So I do not know whether all these things maybe not in media or in the websites, but otherwise we are taking up these things. So about talks, whether we have to take forward the talks or we have to stop it. In fact, at the moment there's no talks as such. Everybody knew very well, we started the talks in January 2011 and ended up in January 2012 with 18 round of talks, and we couldn't move an inch. That's the situation. And the Sri Lankan government asked the Tamil National Alliance to take part in the Parliament Select Committee, where these things can be, discussed. But we told them categorically, Parliament Select Committee can't be the forum, because if the government and the TNA, if we can work it out bilaterally, the Parliament Select Committee is a multilateral forum, and we will be only 3 members from the TNA. And there will be 31 members of Parliament, and the majority of them are Sinhalese. And definitely the people like JHU, the Jadiya Hela Urumaya, the extreme Sinhala elements also are members of Parliament there. And we don't think that can be a proper forum to discuss a settlement or solution to the Tamil people. But at the same time, of course, the genocide is going on. Everybody knew that. How do I say, maybe the militarization, Sinhalization, Buddhicization, if the widows, the exploitation of those, widows, all these things are true. All these things are taking place. But the point is, how are we going to handle this matter? No, if we keep our mouths shut, if we are not going to take up this matter, maybe through a proper channel. At the moment, the TNA strongly feels if there is going to be any talks with the government, there must be some sort of a third-party mediation or facilitation, number 1. Number 2, that must be outside Sri Lanka, number 2. Number 3, there must be international observers. And number 4, there must be a continuity. Maybe, they must be outside Sri Lanka for a week or 10 days to sit and discuss, and there must be a time frame. So these are some important elements if we want to have a dialogue with Sri Lanka, and much more than that. Before this, if we start talks about talks, then in that situation, we have to take up all these matters, whether the government is willing to stop the militarization, willing to reverse those things, whether the government will stop the Sinhalization and various other matters. These things must be taken in the beginning when we talk about, when we discuss the, about talks on these things. So at the moment, we don't have any, how do I say, talks with the government as such, but the South African team, they are taking some initiative, but we do not know what will happen to them or what will happen to their talks. But anyway, we told all these things to the South Africans. Otherwise, we said, it will be a wastage of time. And because we strongly feel, the TNA strongly feel, the Sri Lankan government wants to show it to the world that, just to, keep the international community on their side, they want to tell them, look, no, we are not dealing with TNA. We are talking to them. That's what they want, nothing else. I don't think, because the Sri Lankan president in the last independence speech, very clearly he said, no, there's no devolution, there's no need to be devolution. And of course, we are developing the area and we are, putting up infrastructure facilities, all these things. So this is the mindset of the president. This is the mindset of the Sri Lankan government. So there is, that's the present situation. But of course, as a people who've been suppressed by a government, or at the same time, we are going through a genocidal program. But anyway, that must be stopped. That must be arrested. How can we do it? Are we going to sit and watch, or are we going to keep our mouths shut, or are we going to find some way out? So I think that is an important thing we all have to discuss about it. And another question somebody asked, do we need an armed struggle again? Of course, Chelvanayam, 30 years, politics, and of course, he couldn't stop these, the colonizations or settlement and things like that. At the same time, there is enormous amount of support from the diaspora and the people on the land to an armed struggle, and maybe this is the largest liberation movement in the world. We were having, air power, sea power, land power, and we were having everything, but we lost. With the support of the international community, if I say, that is eliminated, whether it's right or wrong. So even whether it's a non-violent struggle or a violent struggle, this is what happened. But still, we have to fight against all these suppression, and we have to get back. And the Tamil people, we have to establish our own, how do I say, maybe, we have to establish ourselves, we have to establish our lost sovereignty. We have to establish our self-determination. So all these things has to be done. So I think for that purpose, maybe some other, Mr. Krishnaswamy asked about the unity. I think the unity is very much important, whether it's in diaspora or in Sri Lanka. Not only here, actually, diaspora, there are various groups. They are talking for Sri Lankan or the Eelam Tamils. The TNA, they are advocating for the Eelam Tamils. The Indian Tamils in Tamil Nadu, several groups, they are advocating for Sri Lankan Tamils, maybe in Malaysia, maybe in other countries. So there must be a policy, one policy. What are we going to achieve? And that can be, lobbied, that can be propagated in different forms, maybe different manner, but the policy must be one. We can't speak in different terms. We can't, cultivate people on that line. So I think we have, okay, I'm finishing it. So that is the, I think, crux of the matter. If we together, I think we can win everything. His question was why
it's entirely different, sir. So I put up the question about more than 15 lakhs, 1.5 million people are living in Sri Lanka as a plantation laborers.
Yeah, actually, we are trying to organize a grand alliance. Yes. But unfortunately, at the moment, the India Tamil-speaking Muslim leaders and the upcountry Tamils, they are working with the government. They are part and parcel of the government. They are ministers in the government. But anyway, we are trying to enlarge the alliance. We are trying to have a broader alliance. Definitely, we are doing that, and we will do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Gajendra, you have 3 minutes.
I'll just pick up from where you said.
Yes.
I mean, you talked of only the upcountry Tamils. I think there is a need to move beyond just purely the upcountry Tamils, but also the Muslims. And clearly, what is pretty obvious is that if you are going to the political leadership of both the upcountry Tamils and the Muslims, it's a non-starter. Right? So the political leadership of both the upcountry Tamils and the Muslims are very much within not only this Sri Lankan government, but they are very much within the status quo. So they believe in working with the Sinhalese governments, whichever government that may be, and that seems to be their politics. But I draw a distinction between political leadership and the people.
Yes.
Now, if we are to seriously reach out to both the upcountry Tamils as well as the Muslims, I think it is imperative that the Eelam Tamil leadership takes a clear, unambiguous position with regards to what we consider as the Muslim and the upcountry Tamil people's identity. Right? There is a position that that Sri Lanka, the island of Sri Lanka, does not comprise of just simply 2 nations, but there are 4 nations. And if you look at the upcountry Tamil, the Tamil people and civil society in the upcountry Tamils, they are specifically asking for the recognition of the upcountry Tamils as a distinct nation in their own right. Same with the Muslims. The Uluville Declaration spoke of that. That was an entirely civil society initiated position. So I think we need to be a little bit, we need to go think outside the box. I think we must be very careful in that we must obviously take up a position that would be attractive enough for both the upcountry Tamils and the Muslims to choose us over the Sri Lankan, the Sinhalese leadership. And for as long as we are not clear on that, for as long as our position itself is ambiguous, where we just for token's sake talk in terms of Tamil-speaking peoples, of the upcountry Tamils and the Muslims.
So I don't know please correct me if I got your question wrong, and you asked if the TNA should restrict its demand for justice of the victims, yeah? So I mean, I think from the presentations of Mr. Premachandran and Mr. Ponnambalam, it's clear that when it comes to Sri Lanka itself, on the ground, there are pressing problems to be addressed. Yeah? So, I mean, although I can't speak for the TNA, of course, I mean, I think what is being done now when it comes, for example, to the TNPF or the members of the civil society there who are going to the people and who are addressing the problems, who are bringing out what is going on, I think this kind of actions need to be supported. And because, well, that are urgent issues, isn't it? So, I mean, and also the genocide is not what we also now spoke about. It's not just about the killing of people. I mean, although this you referred to this picture that with the tear of blood. I mean, the original definition of genocide goes much further than actually what it is now today. So, what Lemkin said before it became a resolution, it included also the cultural genocide, and that's what's happening now. So I would rather regard it in that way, genocide, and also it has to be addressed in that way. But when it comes also to outside Sri Lanka, I again want to urge the Tamils to be very careful with whom they ally themselves outside Sri Lanka, not to fall prey to false promises.
But now I invite Judlal to just summarize the main points of the session we're just finishing.
The theme of the second session was different forms of genocide. As Andy said, it was a very powerful panel, and that itself indicates clear evidence for genocide. And to begin with, we started by examining the British colonial roots of the construction of the unitary system and the racial ideology that privileged the singular majority and made them to believe that the entire land belongs to them. Now, this was mentioned later by several speakers, and this should not be taken as a mere historical fact. It is important to refer to this colonial construction in order to understand why the current phase of genocide is not being stopped and why no concrete action so far is not taken. So that is how we have to refer back to the past and see the roots of the problem. And the second point is, Jim very clearly referred to the Armenian genocide, Jewish Shoah, and Rwandan genocide, which, that's right, which have come to a halt. But the genocide of the Tamil people as a distinct nation continues. So that is a major question that has to be raised. The third point is, we cannot reduce the whole discourse of genocide to the dramatic, unbearable, inexplicable onslaught on the Tamil people in the last several months in 2009. It is an ongoing process. This has to be kept in mind. Then the fourth point is, the only formidable moment, historical moment, that managed to stop the historical process of the systematic, coordinated destruction of the Tamil nation was the peace process that was brokered on the basis of parity of esteem between the government of Sri Lanka and the liberation tigers of Tamil Eelam. So this is the fourth point that was very clearly reiterated. And the fifth point, it was shown how this parity was dismantled despite the fact that some European nations objected this dismantling of the power balance between the government and the LTTE. Not only it was dismantled, when it came to the last phase of the war, it was interpreted that the entire responsibility lies in the Tamil national movement led by the LTTE for the massacre of the Tamils. So you can see 180 degrees of turning upside down the entire political logic. So that is a deliberate calculation where we really accuse the international actors of being complicit in the whole process of genocide. Finally, could the UN stop this process? And Jim was very skeptical about it. And if the UN channels are not the way forward, which is the way forward, in the final discussion with the audience and the panelists, it in a way became an inner Tamil debate. Am I right to say that? Inner Tamil debate. Which principal position, non-negotiable position that should be advanced? And how should it be advanced? Who are our international allies? Who are less culpable? And who are the most culpable international actors? So it is equally important for us to focus on the inner Tamil debate as well as the external complicity. And these two are interrelated. These two are interrelated. And let me wind up finally the whole session. Now we have moved on from the first session to the second session, from war crimes, crimes against humanity, to genocide. We in fact focus on the case of genocide to a certain extent in the first session, but we have moved on to a clear case of genocide. And it was very clearly shown how it goes on in a very structural way in the Tamil homeland at the moment. Now we will be moving after the break to the third session, where we will have to focus, I would suggest, would the UN channel work? I'm putting feelers. If it doesn't work, what is the alternative? And how could we promote the inner Tamil debate while correlating, connecting into the external dimension and the role of the international actors? And there's one more reminder. While the discussion was going on, a resolution was also being drafted, and it it will be presented to the panelists at the end of this session. And we would kindly request the panelists to go through the resolution so that they could make their comments. And then later during the day, at the conclusion of the session, we can pass this resolution as a collective decision of all of us.
தமிழின் பிம்பம் உங்கள் டிவி.